Welcome to 15 and Counting, Touchdown Alabama Magazine's premier football show, coming to you live from the heartbeat of the University of Alabama right here at Ramah Jammas. Happy Thursday to all of our viewers watching us on YouTube today. Once again, I'm your host, Stephen M. Smith, and beside me, our all-time favorite two co-hosts, Maxwell Taylor, and I'm the White Fellas. How you guys doing?
Doing good. Great.
Doing outstanding. Well, guys, after the 52-0 beatdown Alabama put on Arkansas, the Alabama Crimson Tide has Tennessee this week as a part of Tennessee Hate Week. The game is usually called the third Saturday in October. Apparently this Saturday is the fourth Saturday, but still, Alabama plays Tennessee this week. But we're going to recap a little of the Arkansas game. The difference between this year and last year for Arkansas was, lo and behold, a change of coaches. They went from John L. Smith last year to Brett Bielema this year. And last year they played at home at Fayetteville. This year they went on the road to Bryant-Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa. But the result, the exact same. Arkansas lost 52-0 last year and 52-0 this past week against Alabama. Starting off with you, Maxwell. Alabama's offensive line from Virginia Tech to right now, have they dramatically improved or what?
Oh man, they have improved week from week. The center's position has, just grown just tremendously. Everybody seems to be on page. Everybody seems to be communicating, doing the things that Nick Saban has said in all of his press conferences. We're going to get better at this position. It's going to take time. We do have young pieces, but now we're starting to see the maturation of players like Chad Lindsey, maturation of players like Ari Kwanjo. He's finally understanding how to play with his brother.
And finally, Cyrus Kwanjo, no penalties in this game.
Oh, no penalties. How did I forget about that? No penalties for Cyrus, but even though he's had a good season so far, he's starting to hit his stride, just like our offense is, hitting his stride this week and week to week to week to week.
Going over now to you, Ivan, the Crimson Tide running backs had a field day. And I'm not just talking about T.J. Yeldon, I'm talking about T.J. Yeldon, Kenyon Drake, and how about 200-plus pound Derrick Henry? An 80-yard rumble down the field for a touchdown against Arkansas. The Crimson Tide backs total 352 yards against Arkansas. Assess their play.
A plus. That's all you have to say. They were dominant, as they've always been this season. Like I've been preaching it each week I say this. I'm sorry to be repetitive, but it's not your normal Alabama Crimson Tide running back field. You don't just have two premier backs. You have premier backs that can just come out of the woodwork, even on the third string and even the fourth string at some points, to give you production out of the backfield. And this has been a very consistently improving team. As Maxwell said, the offense is finally starting to hit its stride, and at the perfect time right now in 3 consecutive SEC games, fortunately all at home, but you have Kentucky on the road. Now you come back home to Tennessee. For Tennessee now, and next week is LSU, or 2 weeks from now is LSU. With that, of course, between a bye week. But you have to make sure that your offense is hitting the stride, because LSU's that one game besides A&M that was marked on the calendar. LSU's that game everybody says Alabama can't get upset. LSU's that last time they played here in Bryant-Denny was a barn burner, not scoring-wise, but defensive-wise, and it led to the rematch of the national championship game, which of course Alabama won. But you have to be hitting your stride at the right point, which is what the Crimson Tide offense is doing right now.
They're doing a great job of that. Going over to you, Maxwell, one of the outstanding signs that fans were able to see from the Arkansas game was Amari Cooper getting his first touchdown reception of the 2013 college football season. He had 64 yards receiving. Once again, not a breakout game, but one of those games where he's building back. He's getting back to what we're used to seeing him do last year. How important was him to get that first touchdown pass of the season?
Well, of course, it's another building block game. Like we've been saying week to week, he's just getting healthier. And last week was, again, a showing that he's breaking through the barriers. He had his touchdown reception with A.J., and I felt like A.J. was kind of trying to feed him the ball a little bit, and that was really good because it started to get him involved in the offense again. And we finally started that spark that we thought that we'd see this time during the season, that every offensive weapon is starting to do their job. Tight end O.J. Howard gets his first touchdown reception of the year, and really is starting to show that we're dangerous from everywhere. You saw touchdowns from every point in the field.
Even Charleston Bowers.
Yes, from the halfbacks, from the running backs, to the tight ends, to the wide receivers. It was just an offensive display against Arkansas, and really that's hard to stop when your offense is that balanced.
Ivan, it seems like the words of Kentucky running back JoJo Kim really got to Alabama, because after they gave him a touchdown to Kentucky, they take their anger out by roasting the Hogs. They shut the Hogs off the scoreboard. Arkansas did did not get a single point in this ball game. Arkansas quarterback Bryant Allen was really introduced to college football last season by the Crimson Tide. This year, no different. Really introduced again. Had two interceptions, one from Hotline Clint Dix, the other from Cyrus Jones. And the Crimson Tide defense sacked him. They only gave him 91 yards passing. What was the mindset of a defensive coordinator Kirby Smart and the Tide going into this game?
I don't think it just goes back to the Kentucky, of course, what JoJo Kemp said. I think it goes all the way back to the A&M game. They were highly disappointed in that showing. Their defense gave them 42 points. I know, given this is one of the most prolific offenses in all of college football, but you have to have a better showing defensively as a whole. Since that game, here's a stat that's going to astonish you. Alabama's defense has only given up 16 points since the A&M game.
Whoa!
That is an incredible defensive stand. Yet they don't have as many shutouts as they want. Last week, 2 weeks ago, actually, with Kentucky and JoJo Kemp said they were going to score on them. He scored on them. They scored on them. They were highly offended at that. This week they came in saying, we need more shutouts. We need to make another statement, as if this team hasn't made a statement enough this season, already being A&M and only giving up those 16 points since that week. They said another statement. We're going to shut out a team for the second consecutive year. And that's something that not many teams have ever done in the history of college football. Shut out a team. I believe if I ever go to Fayetteville, Arkansas, I'd love to go into town and brag. Y'all haven't scored a touchdown on us in 2 years.
Man.
Just don't even say anything.
Oh my
Big
goodness.
Stewie in that state last week. Last year.
My goodness. Another statistic here. Alabama has now leapfrogged more in the aspect of total defense. Alabama now leads the nation in points allowed. Going over here to you, Maxwell. Just to end this segment right here, back to A.J. McCarron. He continues to just look fluid. 15 for 21 passing, 180 yards, 3 touchdowns. He has 14 touchdowns, just 3 picks on the entire season. I mean, what is he doing? We know he watches film. We know he's in practice every day, but he's got to be doing something else.
It's confidence. He's just a very confident starter. Confidence builds composure as a quarterback. And there's no more confident quarterback, and I can say probably in the history of this sport than A.J. McCarron or Peyton Manning. And really, that's what breeds winners, is confidence and composure. He understands that he works and he watches tape. He has, to build up every single practice. He puts people in the position that he needs to be, and he holds everybody accountable. He says, do your job, and when they do it, they're unstoppable. Yes, he doesn't put up the statistics that a Marcus Mariota or a Teddy Bridgewater or a Johnny Manziel puts up, but he does one thing, and that's win. And right now, he's winning by a big margin, and that's really evident as the #1 ranking, the BCS. Again, he holds it for how many weeks have we been #1 again?
Makes it 9.
Makes it 9. So I'm pretty sure that A.J. McCarron is, a pretty qualified quarterback to be drafted in the NFL.
Just saying that. But going over to you, Ivan, from the Alabama Crimson Tide. You take on Tennessee this week, and we're going to get into the topic. We're going to get to Tennessee Tide before we touch on that. Despite all the good that happened in the game against Arkansas, Alabama suffered 1 casualty. Starting defensive back Benny Sinceri tore his Achilles tendon in his left knee and covering a kickoff against Arkansas Saturday night early in the first half. His replacement will be sophomore safety Landon Collins. On paper, as far as talent-wise, and as far as the comfort of the position, Landon Collins, his more comfortable spot is in playing at safety. As far as emotional energy, emotional leadership, and just experience, it's very sincere. But is there really a drop-off between Sinceri and Landon Collins?
Besides the maturity factor, I don't see that much of a drop-off. And even with the maturity drop-off, you still have Clinton Dix returning finally from his indefinite suspension. And it seems like, coincidentally, it's perfect timing. Comes back, unfortunately, Vinny goes out. But you still have that veteran in there in the back, the defensive backfield, to help Landon if he needs any guidance throughout the entire game. And don't get me wrong, this team is not going to, they're going to miss Vinny, but they're not going to miss him on the field as much as a playmaker, as much as an on-field general. He was a very good on-field general. Landon is, in my opinion, a better athlete than Vinny, of course. They're more highly touted coming out of high school, and a very good recruit pickup a couple years ago. And everybody's been waiting to see Landon do what he does best on the field. Slowly, he's been building his way up on the depth chart in Alabama. Every time we do special teams, this is the first year I've actually been excited to watch Alabama special teams. because Landon Collins is always out there making plays on the special teams, and that's where he started. And he slowly worked his way up. Of course, injuries did have a factor to do with that, but he has stepped up this season, and we're finally going to see him, and we're finally going to see a long-awaited and touted recruit.
And to build on what Ivan is saying, Landon Collins has shown that he can make the tackles in open space. If you look back at the national championship game, there was nobody coming for Sierra Wood coming back for that second kickoff after Alabama went 14 up, and he just completely laid the wood on that guy. He understands how to tackle in space. He's not going to miss a tackle. And really, we haven't seen Landon Collins have any really just mess-ups in secondary. He's earned the right to be respected now that he's in Vinny's spot. Now, the maturation part and the football IQ part, I don't know, because Vinny Cinceri's extremely high football IQ. His two interceptions for touchdowns have proven that. He's always a step ahead of the quarterback, in my opinion. But Landon Collins has shown and proven that's what I think is the biggest thing. He's proven that he can step up and put it in that area. He's just not the next guy up like some of our quarterbacks admit. He's has the resume to show that he can play at that position.
Well, the question being, will the native of Louisiana rise up and embrace the moment? The answer to that remains to be seen as Alabama will take on Tennessee this weekend. But now, be that as it may, Alabama did defeat Arkansas 52-0. We're not going to get into the game of the week, gentlemen. It's the third Saturday in October. It's the rivalry game dating all the way back to the former legend, who's still a legend in everybody's minds here, Coach Paul W. Bear Bryant, and his legend of hate Tennessee every week that the Alabama Crimson Tide would play the Tennessee Volunteers. So this week is Tennessee Hate Week. Alabama's playing Tennessee. And don't look now, guys, but Butch Jones actually has Rocky Top Volunteer Nation believe it. After going stride for stride with Georgia with an asterisk beside that, Georgia had guys like Todd Gurley and Keith Marshall, Justin Scott West all go down in the game. Be that as it may, Tennessee did compete in the ball game, and then the Volunteers went out and beat a very good South Carolina team. The Volunteers are 4-3 right now. They have a chance to be bowl eligible under first-year head coach Butch Jones. First question here, though, is last year against Alabama, Tennessee struggled defensively. They gave up 44 points to Tide. Alabama won 44-13 in Indiana Stadium in Knoxville. Tennessee this season is giving up 27 points per game. What must the Volunteer defense do, with the leader being linebacker A.J. Johnson? What must Tennessee's defense do to try to at least slow down Alabama, knowing that you're going into a hostile environment at Bryant-Denny this weekend? What can Tennessee do? Starting off with Maxwell.
Well, first of all, you said it just perfectly. Their inside linebacker has to play out of his mind, which he has been. He's a potential first-round draft pick. He has to somehow get to A.J. McCarron. And I think he will at some plays, because this is a very charged game. And it starts and ends, again, with the inside linebacker. He opens up the plays for the defense so that A.J. McCarron throws the ball quicker than he's supposed to and, gets these interceptions that the Tennessee Volunteers have shown and that they're capable of doing. Now, I don't know how successful they will be against the Tide, but when you have a player that special, and this is coming from an Alabama fan to a Tennessee fan, when you have a linebacker that's that special on your team, he's going to get some disruption. He's going to show out, and he's going to play well. But that being said, with Alabama's weapons on offense, they're going to have to find a way to limit A.J. McCarron from using the tight ends, from using the halfbacks, from using the running back screens that they're just patented to doing. Now, you can get to the backfield, but it seems like Alabama has another weapon just waiting to open just to make another play. Now, can Tennessee show different type of packages? Yes, but have they really worked that well against these other teams? Now, they almost beat Georgia on a touchback pass, but that was against a team that really had none of their playmakers at all. Aaron Murray completely housed that game and brought their team to a victory. South Carolina is a different story, but at the end of the game, they lost their main quarterback in Connor Shaw, and he will not be participating this game against Missouri this week. And Connor Shaw kind of really is the glue that holds South Carolina's offense together. So I really don't know how impressive their wins are. They are impressive that they did beat the top 10 in an elite SEC team. But when you beat a team with injuries, I just don't know where to categorize that, especially injuries that are so critical to a team's success.
Going over to you, Ivan, Tennessee has had some great quarterbacks in its history, from Peyton Manning to T. Martin to Casey Clausen. Of course, Rick Clausen, but nobody in Tennessee, but he's actually Rick Clausen right now. Even down to Jonathan Crawford, who was pretty good in 2009. Now the Volunteers have Justin Worley. Justin Worley, this season has 10 touchdown passes, 6 interceptions. He's completing 55.8% of his passes for 1,119 yards. But he has a tall task in hand. Like Brandon Allen with Arkansas last week, Justin Worley has to face Alabama and Bryant-Denny. He has to face that ferocious defense who is starting now to develop kind of a pass rush in Alabama. What must Justin Worley do to manage the game? He has to keep his team in position to win. What must Justin Worley do to just manage the game?
Make sure he doesn't make any stupid passes or coincidental interceptions at key moments of the game. When you can't throw any red zone interceptions, of course, against any team, but especially against the Alabama Crimson Tide. And I will say he's been a pretty decent quarterback this season. I only say pretty decent because a couple of his passes, especially last week, that long bomb, that was a miraculous catch more than a good pass that put them in.
You're saying the receiver made the play.
The receiver made the play. He did not make the play. That was a miraculous. I've never seen a catch like that. So most of his passes have been miraculous. And going back to what Maxwell said, this Tennessee team as a whole is somewhat unproven. I mean, half the Georgia team was on the bench or either on the trainer's table getting worked on or crying throughout the length of that game. It was a very, very injury-prone game for Georgia that game. South Carolina is still, in my opinion, even with Connor Shaw, not a very proven SEC team. They always seem to be a team that's ranked 11th to 15th or 15th to 20th, and they're always in the middle of the pack for the top 25. Yeah, throughout the length of the season, they always find ways to disappoint you somehow. So to me, this is a norm. They're the Clemson of the SEC, in my opinion.
You're comparing the Clemson.
Wow.
We'll get to that in a minute.
Wow.
We'll get to that later. Oh my.
I would take that.
It's not. Well, Maxwell, it's not Alabama's running attack, but the Tennessee Volunteers, they do have two backs that can run the football under head coach Butch Jones. They have Rajon Neal. Rajon Neal so far has 132 carries for 693 yards, 8 touchdowns. And Marlon Lane. Marlon Lane has 57 carries for 335 yards and 4 touchdowns. They do a nice job of hitting the hole. Of course, they follow their offensive line. They have good vision, and they have that breakaway speed once they get to the second level. So, in this game, Justin Worley will be counting on these two guys to take some of the pressure off him, to get to that perimeter of that Alabama defense, to break some tackles, get in that secondary, and make life easier on him as well as the Volunteers as a whole. What would you expect out of Marlon Lane and Rajon Neal to really give this Tennessee team a boost in this game?
They're going to be extremely physical. They're two extremely physical backs. The thing that hurts Tennessee a lot is that they never can really get their running backs to the second level. Rajon Neal has that breakaway speed, but he fits the scheme of what Tennessee is doing right now, playing a physical and hard-hitting game. He's going to lay the wood at you when you're trying to tackle him, and he's going to make you know that, hey, if you're going to try to tackle me, you're going to get me hit. Really, what their running backs have to do, it's not what their running backs have to do, it's what their offensive line has to do. I know I'm repeating what I'm saying, but they have to get that running back to the second level. It just surprises me how good of their running backs that they have, but their offensive line just can consistently not get them to the second level. I'm not saying they need to be Alabama-esque or Stanford-esque offensive line and getting them to the second level every time they touch the ball. I'm saying they need to just get it consistently. Their running backs are very talented, and I'm saying that with the highest regard. But every time I watch them play, sometimes they'll get to the second level, and then the other 3 plays, they won't, causing them to get into 3 and out. And you really can't trust the quarterback on Tennessee to continue his passing attack because he's not really consistent with his ball either. The only really consistent thing is their running backs. But when you don't have a consistent offensive line that gets their running backs to the second level, that's exactly what happens. You get a 3 and out. And that's where Tennessee really stumbles on. Now, their defense does get them the ball a lot. That's why I think they keep in games. But their offensive line has to be consistent. I know that goes away from your question, but that's the answer. That's what needs to happen. It's their offensive line needs to get their running backs to the second level.
Consistency is key. Now going over to you, Ivan. Maxwell just made a good point about Tennessee's offensive line. Coming into the season, the Volunteers' offensive line was one of the more experienced offensive lines in the SEC. We're going over to Alabama's defensive line. What must Alabama's defense do? It all plays off of C.J. Mosley. What must Alabama's defense do to control Tennessee's offensive line to get more penetration, to stop Neal, to stop Lane, most importantly, make Justin Worley feel your presence and cause him to make the mistakes and he's prone to making at times?
You have to practically bum rush the entire Tennessee offensive line. What I mean by that is, I wouldn't be surprised if you could see two defensive tackles from Alabama going after one, predictably the center of Tennessee's offensive line.
So you're stunting them?
Stunning them. Well, it's kind of like a stunt. It's just you're both attacking one guy and it leaves the rest of the line confused, saying, I have to help out my center, which will collapse the whole line if you send it blitz with the linebackers crew. Stunning is going to be a key factor in this game. Tennessee's offensive line was thought to be one of their strong points coming this season. Clearly, it hasn't been due to the running back production this season. However, you always have to expect that one team will come under Bryant-Denny, as I've said earlier this season. It always seems like there's one team that sneaks up on Alabama, and it always seems to happen around LSU time, that they will sneak in and get an upset win because they play the perfect game. That's what you have to do to beat Alabama, is play perfect. Because this team, I don't want to say plays perfect, but they play darn near perfect every time they play and get on the field in Bryant-Denny. So you have to do that as a defense. You just have to make sure that you stay in your zones. Just do everything correct, like Coach Saban preaches. Just do what you've been doing the rest of the season, because obviously it's been working.
Obviously it has been. Going over now back to you, Max, where the Volunteers have a lot of fresh, young, and some physical talent at the receiver position. First off, you have 6'4", 215-pound Marcus North. Marcus North leads the team with 21 receptions for 281 yards and a touchdown. You also have Alton Pig Howard, who's 5'8", 185 pounds. He has 23 receptions for 251 yards and 3 touchdowns. You also have guys like Justin Smith and J.C. Cruz, 6'5", 223 pounds. If you're Justin Worthy in this situation, Maxwell, you have the talent out there. How is he going to get the ball to him?
As I stated before, Justin Worley's not consistent on getting the ball out there. He has the talent and the prospects to get the ball out in space because all three of those wide receivers catch extremely well, i.e. the South Carolina game last week. It was the wide receivers who were more making the play on the ball than the quarterback delivering the pass. And for a wide receiver core, that's kind of got to be frustrating. But they have belief in their quarterback. But he just hasn't shown the consistency to put the ball out there in time. Maybe that's the offensive line fault, but sometimes I put it on Worley because he just makes some bonehead decisions. He makes a lot of really bonehead decisions sometimes. He doesn't like to manage the game. He likes to try to win the game. I.e. that throw with South Carolina, that could easily been picked off or dropped, but instead the wide receiver made the play on the ball. Now, with the wide receivers this week against our quarterbacks, they're going to get space. The wide receivers have got to play better in coverage because this group of wide receivers are going to get space and they're going to be able to break off big yardage. We've got to tackle in space. We've got to tackle. We've just got to find a way to stop them even after they get the ball in their hands because these are some big receivers who are going to get big yardage on big time plays. And that's what Tennessee lives and dies on. Big time plays. I'm lost for words with this wide receiver group because they could be one of the best in the nation. But when there's just ill quarterback play, they're being just under the rug. They're making spectacular catches and they're being highlights, but they're not doing it on a consistent basis. And that's really what Tennessee is. They're not a consistent team. Yet, it's Butch Jones' first year. And I think they're gonna get there under his leadership because he is a very good coach. He's very established coming out of Cincinnati. But right now, this team is just not consistent. And they would be a lot more scarier if they were consistent. And that's all I really got for you.
Going over to you, Ivan Maxwell just mentioned the receiving core that Tennessee has. It's capable of Justin Worley can be a little bit more consistent. They can be better than what they are right now. Which Alabama defensive back, Ivan, do you think has the most pressure on them and guarding these guys? You think it's Ha? Do you think it's Landon Collins? They put Geno Smith in the game. You think it's Geno? Which Alabama defensive back has to have the most pressure on his shoulder going into this game?
Deion Blue. In the Virginia Tech game, it goes back.
We go back to Blue. Why do you think I'm the JUCO guy?
Because it goes back because Virginia Tech tried to do the big play, and if those passes in the Virginia Tech game would have been a little more accurate, he would have been burned on a lot more plays. And we haven't really, A&M had Mike Evans, who really just went around the middle and used his height to his advantage, so you can't blame that on him. But this is another team who likes using those receivers running fly routes just straight up the field, which is not his forte. That's not his specialty, which this is why the most pressure's on him. Let's see. He's not going to be able to get lucky against his Tennessee receiving corps. Like Maxwell said, they're one of the best in the nation. If you're beat against the Tennessee receiving corps, you're beat. They're going to catch these passes. Especially last week's catch against South Carolina, which was a miraculous catch. I'll say it again. But going back to Deion Blue, he's unproven. And I would trust Landon Collins, who hasn't been in the defensive backfield as many games right now, more than I trust Deion Blue. He's been so inconsistent with that. I know lately we've been playing lower level talent. No offense to any of the talent we've played in Kentucky. I had to say their name again. I just love it. We love you, Bluegrass State. But anyway, going back to Deion Blue, he's just inconsistent. This is the one game where I'm watching. If he can control those Tennessee defensive wide receivers, then he'll be good, and I will have more confidence in him throughout the entire season.
Going back here over to you, Maxwell. Though this is a bit of rivalry between Alabama and Tennessee, and like I said, state going back to Paul Bear Bryant, Wallace Wade, Gene Stallings, coaches of that previous era. During this time, Alabama fans love to look towards LSU because they know this is the game with the most ratings. The game is going to be the most watched. The game is going to be the most physical. The game that people call the SEC matchup. But what can Alabama do? They can't afford to look over Tennessee. What must Alabama do to just stay focused on playing the Volunteers this weekend and executing their game plan against Tennessee?
Well, I haven't seen them look away from this game. This is a rivalry game. This is Tennessee versus Alabama. Yes, Tennessee hasn't been the program that they've been, but if you've seen over the years, Alabama consistently beats Tennessee and by a good margin. But except for Rocky Ball, other than that, the past couple of years, they've been beating them by a good margin. But Tennessee's going to come and play. They're going to play their best ball against this team. Not because it's the third Saturday in October, really the fourth Saturday in October, but they're going to play their best ball against them because they want to make a statement. They want to say that South Carolina game wasn't a fluke. They don't want to come into Bryant-Denny Stadium and get smacked. If you come into Bryant-Denny Stadium and get smacked, everybody's going to look at that South Carolina win and say it's because they were injured. They're going to look at that Georgia game and say it's because they were injured. And then everybody's going to bring up that Oregon game where they got torched for about 50 points and say that that's what Tennessee is. And that's what their program might be turning into. Another failure. But I don't see that happening. I think Tennessee is going to come out and play with more consistency. I know I've said that at least 50 times, but if you're a Tennessee fan, I know you want to see it. It's called consistency. Play consistent. I just watched the film with this team, and it's like you make a play on the first down, but then you go 3 and out when you have wide open receivers, you have the running game. It doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe it's the leadership under the quarterback. It's not Butch Jones' quarterback. I think that's the issue. But really, I don't see Alabama looking over this game. You have Coach Saban, and really, they haven't looked over any game this season. They went into Kentucky. Yes, they had a few miscues in the beginning, but then they just pushed the gas on the pedal. They went into Arkansas, another game they were completely favored in. Put the gas on the pedal, blanked them. They looked at Ole Miss. Yes, that was a little bit more of a hype-up game, but they went in there and they executed. I don't have any questions that Alabama is going to execute every single week from here on out because they've answered it for me. And when you're playing teams that are lesser extent this good, that means that you're zoned in, that you're locked in. You're in mid-season to bowl season form already. And that's where the Crimson Tide is right now.
Well, we're going to get into our predictions here for Tennessee Hate Week for the third Saturday in October for Alabama, Tennessee. And we're going to start with Ivan White. Ivan, what's your prediction going into this game right here?
My prediction is going to be 38-7 Alabama. I just don't think we'll go in the 40s this week. I think Tennessee will somehow get a score. But just let me put a quick note on this real quick. Everybody's been saying that Tennessee fans are a little hyped, looking a little hyped up for this game, saying we're finally getting there, we're finally improving. Well, they gave back at least, I think they said 1,000 or more than some odd thousand more tickets back to the University of Alabama. So obviously they're not too confident in this game. I just wanted to put that out there.
Maxwell.
That's me right there. I'm an Alabama fan. I'm going to give them more than a touchdown. I think they're going to go and get 17 points on us. I think it's going to be 42-17. I don't think Tennessee. I think Tennessee's going to hang around. They know how to hang around, and their inconsistencies will be probably the death of them. This is a rivalry game, so they will play a lot better in the first half. Look for that. But in the second half, I think we're going to break away. Don't expect to see AJ in the fourth quarter, though. I think he'll stay in for 3 full quarters this time because this is a more important game, and they do want to get their starters some burn in before LSU. But that being said, I still don't think we see the first stringers in the fourth quarter.
So we're summoning Blake fourth quarter.
We're summoning somebody.
We're summoning somebody in
I'm
that
sorry,
fourth quarter.
Blake, man. You went, We had hope. We had you a touchdown last week. That hurt my soul.
That over and under game was not productive last weekend. So, Ivan, your prediction was
38-7.
38-7. You had
42-17.
42-17. My prediction for this game against Tennessee will get 10. I think second half, Rajon Neal will have that one. Tennessee will have that one drive where they look at Rajon Neal and say, "Pound the ball." You follow the offensive line and you get downfield. Tennessee will get 10 in the second half. Alabama, though, too much of the offensive line. C.J. Mosley will have the guys not been ready to play. Nick Saban's been coaching the ball all week long. A.J. McCarron will have another game where it's another efficient offense for him. I think Amari Cooper continues to build and get healthier and better at the receiving position. Alabama will get this one. I'm going to go 45-10. I'm going to say 45-10. Tennessee will get 10 in that second half, but that'll be all they will get in the game. Well, that'll be all for the Alabama and Tennessee preview. But come right back. We're going to get you caught up with some of the SEC and national action that will be taking place this weekend right after this.
That was 30.